electric vehicles. I don't know if I'm going to use any acting skills for this, but I'll try. Electric vehicles, are they going to happen? So I want you to imagine it's the year 2100. Your grandchildren are zipping around in these cool electric vehicles that are efficient and clean and fast, and above all, they don't rely at all on gasoline. The transportation industry has been transformed. Is this likely? Well, the answer is it depends, and it depends on us. Like no other generation before us, we have the opportunity to make this happen. And the question should perhaps be, electric vehicles, can we make this happen? If it has anything to do with the government, it will happen. That's how much money they're plowing into the industry. There's a reference there for those of you who want to look at that. But before we get too excited about this, we're the guinea pig generation, and we need to take some risks. And are we prepared to take those risks? Is it worth it? So what we're going to do, we're going to look at what it's like today to own one of these things and ask that question, is it worth it? Here we have a Nissan Leaf. I use this as an example because it's very similar, almost identical in many ways, to the other electric vehicles that are going to be available to us in the next year or two. The basics, you plug it in, overnight it charges. It takes about 8 hours to charge on level 2 charging, which is residential charging. It takes about 30 minutes to fully charge the battery with what's called level 3 fast charging. Identical to all of these other cars, with the exception of the one in the middle. That's the GM Chevy Volt. Everybody's heard about it. We're excluding that. We put a big red X through it because it partly runs off gasoline. It has a gasoline-powered generator called a range extender. So we're not talking about that. Just electric vehicles that you plug in. That's all we're talking about right now. In terms of hard risks, let's knock those out of the way straight away. You're not going to get one of those when you plug it in. Any of you who are concerned about that? Our grandchildren are no doubt going to be looking back, wondering why we didn't turn to electric vehicles sooner, given our tendency to fly and drive around in close proximity to tanks of flammable material. So, relatively safe, but what is it like to own? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What are we prepared to do to make this happen? Around town, it's fast enough. It's got great handling. The battery is at the bottom of the car, so it gives it a nice low center of gravity and good handling. Very quiet. So quiet, in fact, that Nissan and Toyota and all the others are having to implement a sound mechanism to warn pedestrians from 0 to 15 miles an hour that you're going to run them over. This is a concept known as hybrid creep in the industry. 0% emissions. Could do worse. Can't argue with that. But what about the cost? Well, let's have a look at the cost. To buy, they're making this as attractive as possible. The industry is making every effort to encourage us to buy into this. That's actually very reasonable, considering what you're getting in a Nissan Leaf with the new technology it comes with. But with the tax credit, the government comes along and gives us a bit of extra incentive. $25,000, still a bit steep. But what about long term? How much does it cost to run? If you have a car that does 35 miles to the gallon, you're lucky enough, I am, because mine's old and crappy, it's going to cost you about that to do 100 miles, $8.25 to do 100 miles, assuming gas stays around $2.89 a gallon. How much, anyone know how much it's going to cost to go 100 miles in a Nissan Leaf? Oh, very close. We've got some very close guesses. $2.75. In fact, the estimate's between $1.60 and $2.75. It's the equivalent of about $99 miles to the gallon. So, doesn't seem so bad so far, but the problem is, as you're probably thinking, this is only half the equation. We want our electric vehicles to do everything. We want to be able to go on our jaunts around town. The average American drives 33 miles a day, but that includes the longer vacation road trips. So what about those longer trips? Range anxiety. Ooh, everybody goes range anxiety. We go on a road trip to LA from Tucson. Is it substantiated, range anxiety? The answer is actually no. Charging infrastructure is growing at an alarming rate. Not only that, but you have fancy onboard software on your Leaf or whatever you have to tell you where the charging stations are. Even if we deal with range anxiety, I could talk about that all night, but I won't. We still have this problem that the Nissan Leaf only takes us 100 miles per charge, assuming we're not driving like a maniac, we don't have the air conditioning whacked up to 11. We've got to charge this car 4 times at least, assuming we leave on a full charge on our way to LA. Each time, even with fast charging, it's going to take us 30 minutes each time. So that's a total of 2 hours added to our trip. Is that acceptable? I don't know. What's the alternative? Well, we wait a few years, and the Leaf manufactures a battery that can take us 300 miles on a single charge. That solves the problem, right? You only have to charge once on your trip to LA. Well, no, actually. The problem with that is that a battery that takes us 300 miles takes 3 times longer to charge on current technology. So you're back to square one, an hour and a half charging time. Not only that, but when you bought the new battery, it set you back that much money. Yeah, not great. But so what is the alternative here? We can't do our road trips. We can do our shopping. We can't use our electric vehicles for everything, or so it seems right now. Charging takes too long. Batteries cost too much. What's the alternative to charging? What are you going to do? You're going to pull out the depleted battery from the car and put a new one in on your road trip to LA? Yeah. Battery switching stations. Better Place has made fairly strong inroads in Israel and Denmark. They build these. You drive in. They're doing a pilot test in San Francisco, for those of you who didn't know. It's going on right now. You drive into the station, robotic arms fiddle around under your car, pull out the old battery, put a new one in, and on you go on your merry way. How long is that going to take? Anyone? Yeah, about 1 minute and 5 seconds. Or less time than, depending on how you like your cheese grilled, of course. So the industry, this demonstrates the industry is making every effort it possibly can to encourage us to buy into this. We've got this car from Nissan's sister company, Renault, or Renault, depending on what part of the world you're from. And you can lease the battery, so you don't own it, so you don't need to worry about the expense of anything going wrong with it if it does happen. And it's the first car with battery switching technology. So it seems like we're already at that stage where all of these boxes are checked, and it's very exciting, with the exception of perhaps one thing, the cost. For one of these guys right now, it's going to set you back that much. It's a little steep, but let's put this into perspective for a moment. Almost exactly 100 years ago, Model Ts were rolling off the production line, and when they were at 19,000, they were costing $950 per unit, and they got up to $185,000 to $490. Almost half. Now, it's a rather crude analogy, but it makes a good point. And that is, inevitably, like any industry, it's evolving, but it's also evolving incredibly quickly. I could tell you this is from the future. Some of you will recognize it. It does that. It's a purely electric car. It's going to do that, I should say. Very fast, accelerating. Entirely electric, no reliance on gas whatsoever. And when is it available? 2012. It's here already, actually. So my point with regards to this on the previous slide is evolution, as in any industry, is occurring, but it's occurring at an alarming rate. That's how much it costs, and that's how many reservations were made earlier this year. And with regards to how quickly that's evolving, I would urge you all to keep an eye on the industry, because I think we can all buy into this. Some of us will be able to buy into it earlier than others, but we all will be able to at some point. And as a result, I think we can make this happen, and we can transform the industry, and I think it will also be well worth it. Thank you very much.